Not just that, research by Nikki Terblanche South Africa came out with a study showing that AI coaching and human coaching had equal impact on goal attainment over a 10-month period. Now you hear that, you're like, oh crap, it's over for coaches. Not necessarily. If you double click and look into the study, they work for different reasons. AI coaching happened way more frequently than the human coaching. And human coaching worked earlier, faster. But by the 10-month mark, they caught up. So where I think AI coaching is, it's a lower potency, higher dosage version of coaching. And there's probably just something about consistently reflecting on what I want to do and what challenges I'm facing. That's probably just healthy. It makes you more likely to succeed. And the AI is one way to facilitate that.
Welcome to the Coaching Studio, the podcast that dives deep with the brightest minds in coaching, psychology, and organizational leadership. You'll hear intimate, thought-provoking conversations with thought leaders and the rising voices shaping the future of human development. Expect real stories, lively conversations, and bold ideas. Whether you're a coach, therapist, leader, or lifelong learner, you'll leave each episode with new insights and renewed inspiration. Join in and let's see where the conversation takes us. Welcome to the Coaching Studio. I'm your host, Lyssa, deHart. And today we're talking about the intersection of coaching and AI, what it changes, what it can't replace, and what it asks of each of us as coaches and leaders. My guest this episode is Tim Harrison. He is the founder and CEO of the Coaching Innovation Lab. Tim sits right at the intersection of leadership development, entrepreneurship, and AI, and he brings both optimism and rigor to this conversation. He's helping shape the industry, talking as a member of the ICF Global Task Force on AI, and he's also been deep in the Show Me the Evidence work as a lead consultant on Project Beacon, a $3 million NIH-funded study measuring coaching effectiveness for biomedical PhD students. Tim also founded EPOG Academy and built an AI-powered coaching system designed to address the 400-to-1 student-to-counselor gap. In other words, he's not just theorizing about access and scale, he is creating and building it. Beyond some of the things you might not know, Tim is a spoken word artist, and we'll get into that. He's the youngest coach to be invited to join the advisory council for the ICF Thought Leadership Institute. He played Division I basketball and studied psychology at Rice University. Tim, I got to meet you in San Diego at the ICF Converge, and I'm so happy to see you again and have you on the show. Welcome to the studio.
Hey, it's good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Oh, super excited to have you. So you're an interesting person. People may not know just exactly how interesting yet, but a lot of people may already know how interesting you are. But it was sort of in that idea that you're one of the youngest people invited to the ICF advisory board for thought leadership. And that really, for me, begs the question of how you got to this place as a young person who's clearly working to make an impact, not just in coaching, but in, for human beings in a world of technology.
Yeah, I think I have a pretty unconventional path. Lyssa, you mentioned earlier I played Division I basketball, and for your listeners, they won't know because you saw me in person. But I'm actually 6'8". And
I was going to ask because I was like, I think he's either 6'9" or everybody calling you tiny was hilarious.
Yeah, Tiny Tim. People remember that because they see me walk in. But as you can imagine, basketball certainly was a big part of my life growing up, and I always thought that was going to be my path. In high school, I was a standout basketball player. I won the San Diego All-Star Dunk Contest where I grew up, and I had a lot of Division I offers probably by the time I was 14. But when I got to college, I struggled. I wasn't breaking through, getting into the starting lineup. And I remember feeling like that was my first time feeling at something that I really tried to go after. And going into that locker room every day, feeling like you were failing at the thing that you were best at. You have to reconcile that. And that prompted me to go on this journey of personal development. I became an avid reader of personal development books. I was also studying psychology, doing research in psychology. And then I got access to a coach. There's this program called the deHart Institute for New Leaders at Rice University. And I got to work with an executive coach when I was like 20 years old, right at that time where I was catalyzing a new identity. Who am I going to be beyond basketball? This thing that I've done my whole life. And that was just such a game changer. It was the personal development, it was the psychology, and there's this coach. And I started to see this through line of like, whatever they're doing to me, this is so powerful because I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of my life again. And it wasn't just fluffy motivation. There was rigor, there was science behind it, and there's psychology. And so I ended up becoming a leader on campus, and I landed my dream job in strategy consulting. And I felt like I had gone, climbed the mountaintop. I went through this, challenging moment, this failure, and now I made it, and I'm on this trajectory to succeed. But then the world changes. In 2020 is when I graduated, and we got hit with a global pandemic and the social justice crisis after the killing of George Floyd. And I'm launching into the new world. I have this job offer, but I'm like, whoa, the world is like on fire and upside down right now. And it was quarantine, so I had nothing but time to think. And I was really like, who do I want to be in this next phase of my life? I had realized I had some talents, and I wanted to use that to do something that felt like it mattered. And I came across this quote by a man named Howard Thurman, who said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." And I was just like this huge aha moment where that's it. What makes me come alive? And I did the self-reflection. I did the personality assessments, and I talked to people. And it was like this coaching, personal development thing was so key. And I saw how it expanded my opportunities, and I saw how it made me show up differently in my relationships. And then I thought about the problems and the challenges. And I think social justice was on everyone's forefront. And that was something that I deeply cared about. And I thought, well, if you could give the same kind of access to coaching and personal development tools, but to people who just might not have access to that, I'd be willing to bet you could change the trajectory of their life. And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. And then I was like, oh crap, now I got to do it. So you have to put your money where your mouth is, And literally, I didn't know how I was going to make the money, but I knew that if I didn't answer this call, I would always know that. And I'm also a man of faith, and I felt like this was a calling. This is something that was an intention and something I was praying about, frankly. And I saw an opportunity, and there's a little bit of doubt of, okay, how are you going to make this work, right? And you're going to walk away from the status of getting this high-paying job after all these different things? Well, yeah, And so I turned down the job offer, and I went all in on starting the nonprofit. Fortunately, I knew that I didn't want to just start a coaching company and not be a coach myself. So I went and got a certification, and the deHart Institute, they waived the $10,000 fee because I was a broke college kid. I wouldn't have been able to afford that. But they knew what I was doing. They knew who I was. I had led in some initiatives for them on campus as well. And I got certified. Now, I didn't get certified with students. That was a rare thing. They had a partnership with this hospital system called MD Anderson, the number one cancer research center in the world. And they're there in Houston. And so it was me, this 22-year-old on fire for like starting this nonprofit, like turned down this job offer, was trying to figure it out. And then like head of nursing, head of this, head of that, head of that. And I was good at it. And by the end of it, I asked some of them if they would take me on as their coach. Many of them said yes. So I was 22 years old and I was coaching heads of departments. And coaching is great because you don't have to have 30 years experience to be effective. Mm-hmm. If you can hold space, if you can ask the right questions. And so that's what I would do on the side to pay for rent while getting the nonprofit off the ground. And that's like how I got into coaching to begin with. It was the nonprofit, and then I would have some coaching clients on the side.
I really want to just kind of go back to something you just said, because I think this is crucial, because I think there's a lot of belief or stories, narratives people have created around, in order to coach a leader or an executive or the head of a nursing department or a head of the medical program, I must have that experience or I'm not going to be able to coach them. And you really are a great example of somebody who kind of blew through that. But that takes a certain amount of, I don't know, chutzpah, I don't know what you call it, right? For you to have that belief in yourself. What did it take? I mean, I'm making up words here, but what did it take for you to be able to be courageous enough, ask, and then also hold that space that you're talking about, even though you didn't have 30 years of experience as the head of a nursing department?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And every client that I've ever worked with probably had that initial assumption. And then they worked with me and they're like, oh, okay, I see. I think it took two things. One, like passion. Like I had been reading personal development, I had been studying psychology. So a lot of the raw capability or understanding, I think that gave me a good intuition. So I think I had a head start to some degree. I was nerding out about this stuff already, and I had a lot of reference points. Two, I'm naturally curious, and I think that's the power. You can influence someone more by the questions you ask them than by telling them what they should do. And I'm naturally curious, and so I just allowed that to lead me, of course, with some training. The third thing, which is probably the most impactful one and the most honest one, is necessity. I walked away from a six-figure job offer, and when I tell you, I did not have anything lined up. I said I had to figure this out, and I was like, okay, well, how can I make money? Cool, we could raise funds for this, but it was going to take some time before the nonprofit could get grants and raise money for me and my co-founder. And so it was, all right, well, I got to coach my butt off to make this happen. So it was a combination of, I think, kind of natural proclivity, interest, and like necessity. If I don't land these coaching clients, like it's going to be a hard time. And fortunately, I was never in a position where it was a challenge, but it made me get better fast.
Yeah, there is definitely something to the be hungry. So that, I mean, I don't know. And given the fact that you have founded a couple different organizations, and you really become a leader already in a very quick amount of time, I experience in my own business and development of my own business that there are so many opportunities for us to quit, and it takes that sort of fortitude and that grit and hunger. Not that you're just going to grind and grind and grind in the wrong direction, but you have to be willing to just keep moving forward, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a big part of my journey, is learning to pivot. In basketball, when you are dribbling, but the ball stops bouncing, if you want to keep moving, you have to pivot. You have to keep one foot in place. And the pivot is to make a change. And sometimes if the ball stops bouncing, for me, literally with basketball, I was like, yo, I'm not going to play pro. So you have to pivot, and you have to pivot. But it's through each of those that you learn a little bit more about yourself. If you allow yourself to, I think it's a choice. It's how you choose to embrace change and how you take ownership when you do fall short that I think unlocks it.
Yeah.
And if you have that attitude, I think it's only a matter of time and before you end up where you need to be. Because if you keep attempting and you learn from every attempt, you get wiser each attempt. And then eventually you have a career. And I feel very blessed in my case, where it feels like everything that I do, all the things I talk about, are a natural expression of exactly who I am and how I'm wired. And I think there's an ease to it. And I think there's a authenticity that I can show up with, because this is legitimately what I believe and what I want to be doing. And it doesn't happen right away. I had to pivot a lot of times, even since then, and I'll probably pivot again, so.
Yeah. There's probably a bumper sticker. Life is a pivot.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I love the analogy to the basketball, because I mean, that's a big part of learning to play a game, is that ability to know what you can't just go, fine, I stopped dribbling, I guess I just like stand here and don't do anything. I mean, you've got to do something with the ball or the game stops, right? And so that having that framework of how to move forward in your life is so valuable. So Tim, as I was introducing you today, and we were talking a little bit about before the show about you're a spoken word artist. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, you really do your research, and I appreciate that. Yeah, so for those of you listening who don't know, spoken word is a art form. It's like poetry, but it's meant to be performed. It's not read. And I fell into it. I've always been very lyrical, writing raps, but I found that I had more room to express myself through rhyme. if in this art form, because you don't have to keep up with a beat. You can tell stories, you can use your body, and you can be very animated. And I had done it a few times. Mostly I would write raps. When I was a little kid, that's what I was like really into. But when I got to college, there was actually an opportunity to perform. One of my teammates, we would travel on the road together, and he would see me writing late at night. I was always writing something, and he said, "Hey man, like let me see some of what you got." And I never really shared it with people. It was really just for me to express myself. I wasn't trying to be a rapper. I just liked the art form and putting my words together. And he was like, "Yo, man, this is good. You should perform it." I was like, nah, man, I'm good." But he said, "Okay, how about this? I'll do one if you do one. And sometime after the season, we'll both perform." And I was like, "All right, cool, whatever." I was a little freshman, and he was older anyway. So I was like, "All right, cool. I'll just say yes." And then it was like 6 months later, I wake up from a nap. I got a call from him, and he's like, "Hey, man, what are you doing on Friday?" I said, "Oh, nothing, man. I'm just chilling." He said, "Cool. I signed you up for a talent show. You're going to perform in front of 400 people on Friday." And keep in mind, this is Monday. I didn't even have anything to perform. And I couldn't do a rap. So what I did was I pieced together a whole bunch of different uh, poems or raps that I'd written together, and I kind of forced it, found a through line, and I performed it at this event called Soul Night. And I ended up getting a standing ovation. And I was like, "Oh, wow, people like this. This is cool." This is just something that I had been doing in the corner to express myself, but it taught me something important about vulnerability, is that at the deepest levels, we're the most similar. And the poem was called Acceptance. And it was really about just like me on a journey of accepting who I am, the things that made me unique in the environments that I've been in. And afterwards, people came up to me who had no demographic relation to me or any of my story, who were like, "Wow, I really saw myself in that." And in some ways, I think there's some parallels with coaching where that vulnerability, I think, is key. That connection allows you to reach people in a way that is, I think, is unique. It can cut past some of the surface level things that I think people make things. We choose to make ourselves more different than each other than I think we are often. And certainly there are reasons for that. And there's history is complicated, but at the same time, I think at the deepest levels, we want the same things. We're after the same things. And if you can see people in that light, I think it allows you to connect no matter the age or demographic that you come from.
I have to say, there's a couple things that really tickle me. One, I love that he said sometime in the future, and then he doesn't, like 6 months later, you're not thinking about that he had told you about. So you're like, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing anything." If you knew it was coming, you might have been like, "Oh no, I have to wash my hair or something," like you could have gotten out of it. But like, "Yeah, sure, let's hang out." And then it's, "I've already done this for you." And this is really such a beautiful example of begin before you're ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very grateful for him. His name's Chad. So I always tell him anytime I talk to him years later. And that was my freshman year, and I did it here and there. But then during the pandemic, I put out a piece around just my identity as an African American, posing the question, what does it mean to be an African American? I put it out. And then a few weeks later is what happened with George Floyd. And so that aspect of my identity was like on the forefront, and then the piece went viral, and I got opportunities to speak different places, to perform. I'll just go open mics, but then also I got to, if I'm speaking about coaching or leadership, I also could then throw in this creative piece. And I think it just made a unique element to my story, to my character. And that's actually how I ended up, part of how I ended up starting the nonprofit, which was I had the idea, but then I got to speak, to perform the nonprofit, and then, perform the spoken word. And it was at a nonprofit. And afterwards, I told the curators what I was up to. "Hey, I want to do this coaching thing." And they said, "Oh, you should partner with us." They were already in a school. And so that actually opened the door to then us running our first program. And then we grew from there. So that actually gave us our launch. And so I think when you just pursue what makes you come alive, the right doors start opening up. And then over time, you start seeing the patterns, and over time, it looks like, oh, this all was meant to be. But looking forward, it just is so unclear. Like, how am I going to pay for this? How is this going to work? But I think there's trust, and there's faith that guides me.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, just so many things about that. And just for everybody, I'm going to ask Tim to do a spoken word demonstration or what is the
Performance.
word I'm looking? Performance. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm going to ask him to do a performance at the end of the show, so hang on for that. And Tim, you're really bringing up the nonprofit, and you're really starting to move into like what your passion is in coaching. And I would love to hear really where your attention is really being focused at this time.
Yeah, they're probably wondering like, where's the AI part? I thought the title.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that AI part for
For
sure.
sure. But I think definitely it's funny that it goes this way because that is my approach. A lot of my work does leverage AI, and certainly it's extremely powerful as a tool, and I'll talk more about it. But exactly how this conversation is going is a lot of how my work goes. It's the human first. And once you understand and come into contact with who the person is, then it often becomes more clear on how they leverage AI. So I'll catch you up on my story from
Yes.
leaving college to starting this nonprofit to then now working with leaders and businesses leveraging AI. So I started the organization. It's called EPOG Academy. That's EPOG, and it stands for the enjoyable pain of growth. And the whole idea was to make personal development part of education. I saw how powerful it was working with a coach, but there's all this great research in psychology that small changes in attitude, mindset, and behaviors can have lifelong impacts. But they're buried in these very academic, rigorous books. They're not being implemented. And I was like, okay, can we help bridge that gap? And so we started the organization and we did it. We ran studies with Rice University and we were seeing a positive impact, right? So I wanted the rigor behind it. I never wanted it to just be, this feels good because there's a lot of programs out there and like bless their heart. I also really wanted to see, can we build a model that can then scale, that can reach other people? And about 2 years in, we started to hit a bit of a wall. My co-founder who I'd started the business with, he stepped down. Our partnership in the school was cut. And then we were quickly running out of cash, right? So we'd raised some money, got a grant here or there, but it was like, all right, look, this is going to be hard work. And I turned down a lot to make this happen. So what does this need to become? And I remember I was feeling a little burnt out and I went to San Diego. I live in Houston right now, but I flew home to San Diego to be with my family for Christmas. And I was sitting in my childhood room, sitting in my bed, and I came across something very interesting, a powerful technology with a funny sounding name, Chat GPT. And I was like, whoa, what is this thing? And I put in some prompts to see, what it can do. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a big deal. It feels like a historical moment. This computer is talking to me. It's intelligent. It's immediate. But then I was like, okay, I went from what can it do to what can I do with it? I flew back to Houston after Christmas and I put it to work. I went for a grant that used to take maybe 15 hours. I did it in about 3 hours and we won $50,000 for the nonprofit. I was like, oh, this can do economically viable work.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had this consulting project. I was booked to complete it in 3 months. I finished it in 1 month, better than I would have done it on my own. But I got paid the same, which means that I tripled what I earned per hour, and I got 2 months back. So I was like, huh. And it just kept getting better. They released the new version and the new version. I was like, whoa, okay. I think the world is changing. Like they've been talking about AI for a decade. I used to read the sci-fi stuff about it. I think this is a turning point in terms of what our technology can do. I really want to go all in on this. And if you ask any of my friends in that period of time, like that's all I could talk about, all I could think about, just obsessed over it because I saw what it did to my potential, what I was now capable of. There'd never been something that immediately, without any technical experience, amplify what I can do. And so I remember thinking about the nonprofit. I was like, all right, well, we need to scale. That's why my co-founder left. He didn't see a future big enough for himself. That's why our program was cut. The school's budgets were getting squeezed. We're impacting a few dozen students. We're not core curriculum. We're the first to go. And our funders, they're like, hey, this is great. We believe in you. We like what you're doing. It's the right approach. But there's a lot of people doing amazing work, and we want our dollars to stretch. And I was like, okay, cool. I had to take ownership over that. But the second part was, all right, well, we need to scale. And I thought, well, if the AI can coach, then we could overcome those challenges like limited space in the school and all those different things. But also, we could reach way more students. And in the US, there is a 400 to 1 student to guidance counselor gap. And that
Mhm.
disproportionately impacts students who are in under-resourced communities, whether it's worse graduation, worse college attendance, worse earnings in their career afterwards. All these things are linked to that. And the schools are doing their best. That counselor is trying to manage 400 people. Many of you listening are coaches. Can you imagine if you had 400 clients? How
Yeah.
meaningfully would you be able to engage, right? Let alone you're also working in the school doing all these different things. So it's like, all right. So I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, if we can build this AI coach, that's great. Challenge was we couldn't hire a team of developers, and I'd never written a line of code in my life. So what did I do?
Chat
I went,
GPT.
I went to the AI and I said, hey, this is my situation. This is what I want to create. Here's why I want to do it. Here's who I am. I have no technical experience. What are my options? And I learned. I was like, oh, there's different options. There's low code, there's no code, there's these different things, there's APIs and all these technical terms that used to intimidate me. I had a strong enough reason. I had a necessity as well, right? Kind of like before. Necessity is the mother of invention. And I went back and forth that night. And by 5 a.m., I had a working app. So I had never written one before. I had a working app that could take someone through a skilled coaching conversation. And as fate would have it, a few weeks later, I had a talk at a school and I threw away my entire script and I said, try this instead. And I had the students go through a session. And at the end, they're like, wow, this actually didn't just tell me what to do, but it asked me questions. It really made me think. I got some tangible next steps. And I was like, okay, this is great. I'm glad the students have an impact. But I had a much bigger realization. I just delivered 30 minutes of coaching to 50 students. That's 25 hours of coaching in half an hour. And the only reason it was 25 hours and not 50 is because there weren't 100 kids in the room. It would have been the same effort on my part.
Right.
And that's just one session. That would have taken me an entire semester to meet with 50 kids one-on-one for a 30-minute block. I would have to like book out the whole semester. And like there's 500 kids at the school. There's 15,000 in the district. They all, in theory, could scan that same QR code and have their own session. That's more coaching than I can do in my entire career off of one. They could do 100 of those. So I was like, oh my goodness, my potential just became exponential. And I built this thing overnight. And at that point, I had done enough things. And that was the real catalyst moment. I was like, okay, the world has changed. And not everyone knows it. Not everyone realizes what just happened and what is now capable. So I'm going to push these boundaries as far as I can because now I have an opportunity to have an impact at a scale that I'd never thought of before. And I realized that there's 3 fundamental rules that have now changed. You know, and earlier we talked about the game, right? And the rules of the game. And when the rules of a game change, it changes how you play. Rule number 1, you can go from idea to execution almost instantly. Rule number 2, you can build things for little to no cost. And rule number 3, you can apply skills that you don't have. It was those 3 things in combination that just blew all the external limitations off of what I can do. It was the moment, the hard part was realizing, oh, wow, I had to take ownership over why my co-founder left, why our program was cut, why our funding was drying up. But as soon as I realized the path to overcome that, scale, the barriers of time, money, and expertise had been removed because I was using AI. And literally overnight, I built the solution. In the next week, students were engaging and I was collecting data on it. And that then opened up new doors to be able to invest into the tool and get more people, get more resources, and do more research in that direction.
And this is just one. I love it. And I love your 3 rules because I think that's true. And I think also, and I could be wrong, you spend a lot more time in this space than I do. So I'd be really curious your thoughts on this. But I think also when you do have an expertise in something, you can probably even make it slightly better because you're bringing more insight and understanding into what you're creating. And I see you nodding your head. And so I think I'm probably pretty close to on track there. But I think the part that I think people are afraid of is if you can do that, one guy can do that, what does it then mean for coaches? And how does AI then, how do we keep it as a tool and not just as a takeover?
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're hitting the head on the nail.
Or the
Hitting the
nail
nail
on the
on the head.
head?
Yeah, hitting the nail on the head there of what a lot of people's concerns are. So there's two parts of that. One, you mentioned the whole part about, increasing your strengths or having some existing expertise. And then the other part is, what about coaches and how do we use this? And I'll address the first one first because I think it blends into the second. So if I forget the second one, make sure we
We'll
bring
come
it
back
back
to
up.
it.
But there is research from Harvard, BCG, Wharton, MIT, all of them. And they're starting to realize patterns on how AI augments our capabilities. And there's something called the compression effect. And one of the things that it does is it gives us the biggest boost in our areas of where we're incompetent, our areas where we don't have any expertise. It helps us, it almost completely bridges the gap between a novice and an expert, frankly, because you can leverage that intelligence. But in our areas of strength, we actually have little to no effect. It doesn't boost it. And in some cases, it actually diminishes it. Once people stop using AI, there's atrophy. So, in other words, it raises the floor, but the ceiling is still up to you. And that's actually a good thing because human expertise, if you really have a specific expertise, your judgment still matters. And you're better able to predict when the model goes off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
Practically speaking, when I built the AI coach, it didn't make me a better coach. My
Right.
core competencies were the same. But what it did was it raised the floor on my ability to code. And then when I combined my coaching skills with coding, I built an app that could then scale. So effectively, yeah, I became a more effective coach, but it didn't make me better at the skill of coaching. And that's how it tends to work out. So if you have an expertise, it still makes you effective because I prompted it. I didn't just say, hey, coach. I had to say, okay, well, what is the structure of a session? And then I had to go through a session. I was like, that wasn't good. It didn't obey my prompt. So then I needed to go back. And so I went back and forth and back and forth. And every single touch point, I'm leaving my fingerprint. And then
Right.
there's this experience that's unique to me. And so that's really what it looks like. You're augmenting yourself. It's not just about replacing. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. And yes, there will be disruption. I think that's just honest. If you see what these tools can do, the world's going to change. The world is changing and it's being pushed forward. Now, I still think there's so many things that a human does and a human brings that these systems can't do. And there's a lot of things that these systems can do that I can't as a coach. I can't remember every single conversation verbatim that I've had with you. I can't respond that quickly. I can't send you automated messages at all these different times. And I think it's a combination of what are the things that only I can do, or what are the things that are most important for me to do, and what are the things that the systems can do that can expand my impact. When I founded the Coaching Innovation Lab, it was my thesis was coaching is going to change because of these
Mm-hmm.
realizations. The top 4 use cases of ChatGPT right now are all coach adjacent. It's like therapy and companionship, finding my life purpose, organizing my life, and things like that. If you look at, that's what they're saying. And most people don't know what coaching is, frankly. It's traditionally been reserved to people at the top of hierarchies. It's now
Yeah.
starting to get democratized, but it's only going to go so far down the org chart, and even more rare in schools. I was fortunate to get it in school. And so I think this could actually provide access to people who may have never received this kind of support that could be life changing. Because ultimately, we're in the business of realizing potential. And I had to kind of get over my own ego with that too, and be like, oh, you know what? This thing isn't as good as me, but it's better than the best available human. Because for most people, the best available human is nobody,
Yeah.
right? Now,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, what about the coach, though, right? What about the coach? I think the thesis is twofold. AI will do more coaching, and coaches will do more with AI. So you could either be fearful that, oh, wow, this AI coach is going to replace me. Or in my case, I built an AI coach that allowed me to now impact thousands of people personally,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't need to learn the code to do that. These things are accessible to you. And so it really is about how are you going to respond to this change? And as a coach, that is your job, helping people adapt to change because growth is a change. If someone's coming to you, they want to grow, They want to change for the better. And a lot of the raw skills that make you good as a coach also make you effective at using AI. How do you use it? You put in a prompt. What's another word for prompt? Question. Question. And coaches are better than anyone in the world at that, right? Curiosity, understanding, right? AI is removing the external barriers of time, money, and skills, expertise. Therefore, the bottleneck on your potential shifts inward. It's your own agency. It's your curiosity. It's your judgment in your area of expertise. Mm-hmm. It's your understanding of your client. What are their real needs here? And then you can push and you can create new things. You also can become massively more efficient. A lot of coaches are just doing session after session after session after session, and they like what they do, but they're doing admin and they're trying to figure out how to grow. They can't necessarily hire somebody yet. AI can be a digital employee. And a lot of what I help coaches do is leverage AI to get more efficient so they can spend less time administrating and more time difference making. And then once they get there, they have time to think. Then they can create, augmented versions of themselves. They can create unique experiences. Now, also, I am for using it, for applying it, but don't just use it blindly. I am certainly enthusiastic about it, but you have to be intentional. It's a powerful technology. I call AI the great multiplier. It'll multiply the positives, but it'll also multiply the negatives. And so our core principles with the Coaching Innovation Lab are effective, authentic, and responsible, right? We want to help coaches use AI effectively, authentically, and responsibly so they can increase their profits and impact. That's what our whole mission statement is. Effective, meaning how do you get real results? There's so much hype out there, and there's so many new tools that are coming out on a constant basis. And there's also a lot of misinformation out there. People who want to be thought leaders and they just kind of regurgitate information. You can tell the difference between people who are actually using it in their business and getting real results and talking about case studies versus telling you, oh, hey, AI is going to save your business, and okay, well, what have you done? How does that actually manifest in your business? Because it's not just going to do it for you. It takes intentionality. It takes iteration, and it makes things a lot easier, but you still have to work. Yeah. And that's good news, because that's where the value is created. Authentic is about how do you keep your core voice, right? A lot of content online is very generic. The same research from Wharton and BCG, I think, finds that AI does give high quality ideas. If you have 100 ideas that AI comes up and humans come up with, it actually comes up with more, with higher quality ideas overall. However, it takes human judgment to understand which idea is most likely to succeed. Humans are still better at the AI. Yeah. So it knows more, but we know best. And while it gives a lot of good ideas, it gives everyone the same good ideas. And so you still need to bring your uniqueness into the model, because who we are is how we prompt. If you have a proclivity towards certain language, if you have a certain type of program, that's going to give you a unique expression that these models can then amplify.
Excuse the quick interruption, but I wanted to make sure you knew about my monthly Coaches Q&A. Join us on the third Monday of every month. We talk about all things coaching. We have coaching demos. We discuss the competencies. Really, no coaching topic is off limits. And we have an added networking event at the end of every session. So come find your people and be a part of this community. I want to see you there. And on that note, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. It's interesting. I was having a conversation. I've had several conversations with people over the last couple of months around AI, and some of the research that recently had come out, I guess last September, October timeframe, was that it is now coaching at a ACC level very easily, beginning PCC. And I recently had a conversation with Jonathan Passmore, and one of the things that he was saying in their research was the thing that it's not good at is humor. And so that interconnectedness of human to human is still, it's still there. I think there's some people who are going to find the AI might be easier because maybe they don't feel as judged by it, or, those sorts of things. On the other hand, I'm wondering if you are seeing any kind of backlash isn't probably the right word, but sort of rebound on people feeling over AI'd. I mean, I know I read articles and I'm like, you can just tell all the people who've written articles now that are just AI, or all their responses to things are just AI responses. And so I'm wondering, do you think there'll be any rebound towards people really wanting an actual human being, if at all possible?
Absolutely. I think people appreciate authenticity. And when people realize it's AI, it's not that it's a low quality article. It's that I'm not hearing your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's been some research too. I wish I knew where to cite this one, but I remember coming across it where people actually rate AI responses higher than people generated responses. But when they find out it's AI, then the ratings go like way down. So it's actually not the quality of writing; it's the fact that it's not you. I'm not engaging with another person, and something about that maybe feels cheap. Something about that maybe feels inauthentic. And I'm not getting you. And I think that's the biggest hope is we still care about other human beings. We've evolved, we've developed to really care deeply that I'm talking to another person. And yes, the AI may be a judgment free space. That is some of the value there. Maybe there's conversations that would otherwise never happen because the best available human is nobody. And I think part of why coaching works with a human is because you will judge me. And I know that you will judge me. And I'm hardwired to be accepted by my tribe. So if you
Yeah.
say, and if I commit to you, hey, next time I see you, I will have done this, I care that you will subtly know that I didn't keep that commitment.
Did you
And that's my
follow through
reputation.
on this, Tim? Did you follow
Yes,
through?
exactly. Exactly. But if the AI does, I don't care. I don't care. I ignore notifications from stuff from online all the time. And so I'm used to that. So my psychology is different. And I think that that difference will always be the same. And I'm sure there's good research out there on like what are all those different things that people care
Mm-hmm.
about and people don't care about. But I think the future is hybrid. It's augmented because you can't ignore the fact of the scale. You can't
Yeah.
ignore the fact that most people could just never work with a coach ever.
Right.
Then the idea though is I think coaching is a more quality experience. Not just that, research by Nikki Blanche South Africa came out with a study showing that AI coaching and human coaching had equal impact on goal attainment over a 10-month period. Now you hear that, you're like, oh crap, it's over for coaches. Not necessarily. If you double click and look into the study, they work for different reasons. AI coaching happened way more frequently than the human coaching. And human coaching worked earlier, faster. But by the 10-month mark, they caught up. So where I think AI coaching is, it's a lower potency, higher dosage version of coaching. And there's probably just something about consistently reflecting on what I want to do and what challenges I'm facing. That's probably just healthy. It makes you more likely to succeed. And the AI is one way to facilitate that. I wonder if they just journaled about their goals and their progress once a week, like how that
Mm-hmm.
might be similar. Versus a coach is much higher potency, but less dosage. Meaning per session, I'm getting way more value from a person
Right.
and I need less of that, right? Challenge though is the economics of that. A person might charge 300, 500, 700, 1500 in an hour versus you can leverage these tools for free and do it a lot more. But I think that we haven't fully figured out what is that new model. And
Mm-hmm.
the onus is on you as coaches to think, well, how can I leverage this? How can I leverage what makes me unique and distinct? And then how might I be able to take advantage of these tools? Some people will just prefer to work with a human, even if the AIs are just as good. And maybe your client demographic is like very not prone to technology, and maybe you'll feel safe for the rest of your career. But at the same time, there's a lot of value that's left on the table to
Yeah.
not figure these things out from a
Yeah.
service side. And there's the efficiency side where you can save hundreds of hours every year and spend more time being a human.
Well, and you talked about, I mean, this time is a disruptive time. And I mean, human beings have consistently had disruptions. We can go back to, really any kind of massive change in the way we function. I was talking to somebody, I'm like, it makes me think about in the turn of the century, or maybe in the late 1800s, most towns or cities were using burning whale oil in order to light streets, right? And at
Yeah,
some point between Nikola Tesla and Edison, we have electricity. However, that all happened, and now we have electricity everywhere. And the whale hunters, you didn't have a job for the same degree of whale hunting as they had before. It's a terrible analogy, but I think
I
it's
know the whales were happy.
I'm happy. I'm honestly love the whales. But I do think it's, like, it isn't like this is the first disruption that we've ever had in the way that we do things. I mean, you had like all of a sudden, assembly lines putting together cars versus one dude putting together a carriage all by himself or whatever, right? Like, so we've had these multiple elements of disruptions. It just seems in some ways, and I don't know how you see this, I'd be very curious, but that this is a really big disruption
Yeah.
because of the fact that it can do so many things well. And while before you might have had, you know, assembly workers losing their jobs or whale hunters losing their jobs, now you've got like lawyers, accountants, like pretty much like across the board, everybody's on the line to some degree. And so how do we navigate this disruption in a way that's useful? Because there's thinking about how do we use this technology, but then there's also like, how do we figure out what our part in that is?
Yeah. Well, one, I think you learn by doing what we were talking about earlier, right? Start before you're ready. I think getting familiar with the tools is a good idea. That doesn't mean tomorrow you have to use an AI tool on a client project. But if you haven't, play around with it. Try some small tasks, right? And then work your way up as you build skills, as you learn the capabilities. See, well, can I handle this more important part? So you just start with curiosity. Start with small wins. I started, can it help me write this grant? Oh, wait, we won $50,000. I was massively rewarded very early on for my use cases of AI, which encouraged me and it gave me confidence because I learned, okay, that didn't sound like me. I need to feed it context about me first. Now it sounds like my voice because I didn't
Mhm.
want to come across as inauthentic to the grant writer because we'll lose the money, right? And so like start small. The other thing I would say is I'm glad you mentioned like the Industrial Revolution and earlier because there have been disruptions before. And there's this story that I love. I find it hilarious that when the combustion engine was first invented, everyone knew that this is going to transform transportation. Everyone knew that. There was consensus around that. But if you look at some of the early mock ups, you might have seen a horse and buggy with an engine in the back because they thought, oh, wow, with this new power, we would make it so much easier and so much more efficient for the horses. They can go twice as long and less wear and tear. And like you can imagine, that's where they're thinking. And they thought they were so smart. And we look back at that now, like, oh
Oh,
my gosh,
wow.
obviously you needed a Model T. Obviously you needed a vehicle. And I think we're still in that phase. We have this AI powered engine, and everyone knows this is going to transform work, right? But a lot of what we're talking about is okay, let's write emails faster. Let's write this blog post. The real opportunity is in finding the Model T in your area. And that could be this big new hybrid AI coaching system, but also it can mean, hey, I have a new way that I'm going to do proposals now. That doesn't take, 3 or 4 days. I could do it in 90 minutes. And as a result, I might land a few more contracts because I'm quicker and because I'm efficient. That's a Model T for me in that area.
Mhm.
What's the Model T here? What's the Model T there? So start off with some quick wins, but then think bigger. Not just
Yeah.
how can I do what I'm doing better, faster, cheaper, safer. It's what's now possible because that's the real opportunity. Don't be the engine powered horse and buggy.
So I really hear what you're saying, which is this idea then that each of us sort of are in this position of innovation for our own way of being in the world and finding our own Model T. Any suggestions, like how are you talking about this with people on how they go about starting to find that Model T that they need for themselves?
Yeah, and I love that question. I have a framework called the 4 A's of innovation, and it's a ladder that not only allows you to leverage AI in increasingly integrated ways, but it's also a pathway to let AI push you into things that are uniquely human. So everyone has 4 zones of ability: your zone of incompetence, zone of competence, zone of excellence, and then your zone of genius. Zone of incompetence are the things that you don't do well and others can do them better than you. You have your zone of competence, things that you're average at, but you're average. Anyone can do them and a lot of people are better. You have your zone of excellence. These are things that you're good at, but and you're better than others, but maybe some parts of it are tedious or drudgery. And then your zone of genius. This is the part everyone loves, right? It's the thing that you enjoy the most, the thing that you're best at, and has the biggest impact on the work that you do. And then you have these 4 A's of innovation. We're going to put them together. The first A is automation. Automation is AI does everything completely end to end. Then you have augmentation. That's you do as little as possible. AI does most of the work, but you still kind of need to be in the loop. Then you have amplification. That's where you leverage your strengths and then you leverage the strengths of the AI. And then you have adaptation. And adaptation is the Model T. How do you reimagine something to begin with? And so there's a one-to-one relation. Your things in your zone of incompetence that you're not good at, you want to completely automate. If I'm not good at it, can a system do this completely better than me? For example, in a coaching business, that might be using a meeting scheduler like Calendly or one of the other ones, where you just send them a link and then completely without your involvement, they click the link, they see your availability, they map it to their availability, they choose a time and a date, it sends them a confirmation email, it puts it on both of our calendar, it adds a Zoom link, and then it gives them reminders of the before or after, and maybe even my AI note taker joins the call and it transcribes the whole thing. So just that one piece of effort of just like putting the link in an email might have saved me 15, 20 minutes of manual work, but I have 15 meetings a week. And if each of them, let's say it's 30 minutes, that's 7 hours every week that I just don't have to think about, completely automated. And I'm okay being incompetent as a meeting scheduler. That's not part of my purpose.
Yeah.
That's not why people want to work with me.
What?
Right?
That's not your dream?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Now, maybe the person who built Calendly, that they manifested, something impactful by helping people schedule their meetings. So there's no knock on if that is your area. There's like you can do that at a high level, but for me, like that's just not it.
Yeah.
Then you have your zone. Then you have your zone of competence, things that you're okay at, average at. Then you want to augment. Let's say it's the meeting note taker. It joins your call automatically, but then it has a summary. But sometimes the AI can hallucinate. It's not 100% accurate. Mm-hmm. So you might want to have your judgment first. You know what? Hey, you missed that detail. Or, you know what? Can you highlight this part of it? And then you send it out. So you're competent at it. Like anyone could probably review the meeting, but you have some insight and some understanding about who the people are and what needs to be said. So you do that, and then it sends it out to everyone following up on the meeting. And then you have your zone of excellence. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. Because when you're effective at something, you want to keep doing it. But sometimes good can be the enemy of great, right? So your zone of excellence, you're above average here, right? But AI has certain advantages that you don't have. An example I like to use is creating presentations, right? I almost never make slides anymore. What I do is I write my talk and I write my outline. I know who my audience is. I know what I want to say. I have my frameworks and I have my charisma when I perform it. But, spending 45 minutes figuring out what font to use and why this icon should be exactly, 1.5 inches from the right, that is the bane of my existence. I'd never want to do that again. And fortunately, there's many AI tools that can do that. So I just upload my transcript, I upload my outline, and it builds the slides. It generates those images. Now, what you don't specify will be decided for you. And so what I do is I say, well, hey, I'm talking to a group of lawyers in New York at the Lawyer Coach Conference in a few weeks. If I'm making that presentation, I need to tell the AI, hey, my audience is lawyers. So show people who might look like that or be inside of what looks like a law firm, right? So that's the back and forth. I focus on what I do best, which is the communication, which is the message. And I let the AI figure out the slides, figure out where to put the words. And then I do one last pass. But what that does is, instead of 5 hours on a presentation, I'm spending maybe 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and then I get that time back. And then how many presentations do you do a year? I might do 30. So if I'm saving 2 hours times 30, that's 60 hours just on one use case. And you can find a dozen use cases that completely changes what it looks like to run your business, right? And then the creme de la creme, you have incompetence, competence, excellence, and then you have
Genius.
automate, augment, amplify. And the last is your zone of genius and adapt. You want to adapt everything around your zone of genius. This is the Model T. And by the time you go through your business and work your way up these A's, you have confidence. You understand a little bit more about what these tools can do and can't. And now you're like, you know what? Let me fully lean in on this. What that means is you take a look at what you do and you think, okay, what is the core thing that only I could do, that the systems can't do? And also, these are things that I do better than anyone else, or that bring me joy. Bring me joy. That's a part of being in your zone of genius. And what you do is you adapt it around that. For example, my zone of genius is communication, being able to systematize information in a way that's tangible for people so that they can act on it, usually in the realm of realizing their potential. Shows up in coaching, shows up in speaking, and these different things. That's core to what brings me joy and what I think I'm good at. And so what I end up doing is, let's say I want to put out content online. I will record a video of myself and I'll come up with a few question prompts, things that I could just go off and talk about for 15 minutes if you let me. Like right now, this is a great conversation. And what I'll do is I'll just go off and I'll speak to the camera. If I make mistakes, I just kind of stop and, I'll speak again. I take that recording. AI automatically transcribes it. So I have content that I can then turn into articles, that I can then turn into LinkedIn posts, that I can then turn into newsletter material. Then I take the raw recording and I throw it into another AI tool that reads the transcript, and it actually clips and edits different highlights. And it could be a 90-minute talk. It could be a 45-minute interview, and it'll find the moments that I said something that would be compelling. The AI has the ability to kind of find where those clips are. Now, I still think I'm better at choosing which one is the best. It knows more, but you know best. But it does all the editing for you. You can add your logos, you can add these different things. And then from that same app, I can schedule to post on LinkedIn. And it'll even draft the post. I don't like how the AI sounds. I'd rather be my voice. So I choose to do that. But that's my choice. So then what I end up doing is I speak on the camera for 1 hour and I have a month worth of content.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you adapt your entire business flow around that use case. Mm-hmm. And so it's do what you do best. Let AI do the rest.
And I think that is Tim, that is like really important, because I think, especially when you're running your own business, you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, you've got so many different things pulling at you all the time, to find those things that you love to do and then to be able to leverage the AI to turn it into content that you can then share. But because it's something you love to talk about, you're going to talk about it with passion and love, and it's going to all come out in that way. And you're reducing the amount of time you're spending editing it, trying to sort it all out. I don't know. I mean, I like working with Adobe products, but not everybody does. And so, like editing and all of that stuff isn't necessarily fun for everybody. But also, to your point, even a really good editor might take, 10 hours to edit something, depending on what it is. Like an hour's worth of content, it might take 8 hours to edit all kinds of different things. And if the AI tool can do it for you, again, you're going to have to put in your 2 cents as to which pieces to highlight or what parts to highlight. But it's really that partnership that's happening where you get to do more of what you love. You're going to also have to give us that tool's name so we can put it in the show notes so people can go and find that tool. Because I think people sometimes, due to fear, end up avoiding learning how to use things. And so one of the things that I'm really appreciating about this conversation is your positive enthusiasm about the topic, but also the tools, and not to lose yourself in the tool and be replaced by the tool, but rather use it to really elevate yourself.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning of this podcast, I mentioned a quote by Howard Thurman, and this will be a callback. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. When I heard that, I made my own personal life mission statement. And my mission statement is to inspire and equip people to realize their potential. And I think that equip part of my mission is why I'm so interested in these tools, because there's never been a time before where you can just immediately expand what you're capable of without needing to be an expert at the very tool that is helping you do that. You know, it's not like learning how to drive so you can, work an automobile.
Right.
If you can talk, you can access PhD level intelligence and, effectiveness. And as a result, what that enables other people to do. I have someone who I worked with. His name is Derek. And he worked with me with the nonprofit as a contractor for a little bit. And in 2022, I was telling him about AI. And he's like, nah, man, whatever. Come years later, he's running his business and he's like, hey, I want to learn about this AI stuff now. And I brought him through my program, and using that workflow that I talked about, where it's video editing and whatnot, he was getting ready to hire someone for $3,000. He had talked to them that week. And I said, oh, don't worry about that. Use this tool and use this workflow. He didn't end up working with that person. That means he saved $36,000 that year, every year, because he was going to bring them on just to do that. Instead, he shrunk the task and then he delegated that to, I think, a VA and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And so great for Derek. But what that allowed him to do is he's spending more time with his kids. What that allowed him to do is now he's profiting $36,000 more. He's going on vacations, doing those different things, right? So it's always in service of the human. Now, that story didn't work out well for somebody.
Yeah, the guy on the other end doing the video.
Right. Now, but if you're the video editor, he has these tools at his disposal because he still has good judgment. Because it's not, being a video editor isn't just clipping the thing. It's actually understanding how to produce something. It's understanding how to take someone's vision and then make a polished product. And there are intangible skills with that. Now, if the AI video editor the human video editor stays at that level, he or she will be replaced because these tools can do it better. Instead, if they allow themselves to raise up a level and think, okay, you know what? Now, how do I serve 10 times as many people? Or I can offer to do 10 times as many videos for the same amount of cost because there's less effort on my part. You know what? Let me be more of a strategy partner to these people because they're creatives. They don't know. They're experts at what they do. They don't know about video production. So then now, and that's more valuable work that people will pay more per hour for that, right? So the onus is on us to level up. And then as a result, he as a video editor is going to use that video editing tool way better than I would because he knows about video editing, at a higher level. Right. Just like Calendly, we kind of made a joke that, oh yeah, scheduling calendar is like not high leverage work, but whoever founded them, I'm sure they made a lot of money because I use that and I will use that for the rest of my career. That's a higher level of scheduling calls.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of what we had before it, which was, I think, something like Doodle, where you all had to agree and you're checkboxing all these different dates and times, trying to see where everybody would be. And Calendly or Acuity or whatever your system is, makes it just so much easier for you to go find a time that works for you. And we know it works for the other person. And then you get emails and updates. Yeah. I know we're going to have you do a word art demonstration, performance, but I on the show have a thing that I do with each guest where I have a guest leave a question for the next guest. And so the question that's been left for you as we're kind of coming to a close, and I'm really curious what you're going to say because I think I have a sense of it, but I'm not positive. What is your one overarching guiding value?
Contribution. The giving of oneself for the enhancement of others. I think life is a journey of giving. I think that's the most fulfilling path. It's not about accumulation. I think that leaves you empty. But when you see that you're having a positive effect on the people and the places around you, you feel useful, you feel valuable, and it's undeniable because you see it and you get to benefit from it. I also, that is deeply rooted in my faith. And I believe that we all have gifts that we're given, but the gifts that we're given aren't for us. It's not like we're receiving a gift. It's ours to give. That's the true purpose of a gift, is to give it away. And there's a paradox. I think when you have that mindset of giving away everything that's of value, you end up getting way more.
Yeah.
It's when you try to hoard and when you try to store up for yourself that, one, you don't appreciate what you have, and it's repelling to other people because it signals, oh, if I am generous to them, they're just going to receive it for themselves. And that's generous with your gifts. That's generous with your finances. That's generous with conversation. We all know the person who just wants to talk about themselves the whole time, and no one wants to keep talking to them. But if you're the person who's asking questions, who's listening, everyone wants to keep coming back to you. Being a coach taught me how rare listening is. When you just really sit there and allow someone to draw them out and ask them a powerful question, and you're good at this, so I know you know this. They will just unfold and they'll talk for 30 minutes straight. And they'll be like, Lyssa, this was such a great conversation. And you didn't say anything.
I did so little.
Yeah. So contribution.
I love that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I would love to hear your spoken word performance art piece.
Yeah, I love to perform it. This one is called Final Slumber. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I'm on my back in a casket, looking up at loved ones as they come to the front and pass. Wish I could reach out and hug, but I can't because my time is up. Was it well spent? Am I hell bent? Or am I headed to heaven? I'm listening close to the words of the Reverend. What is he saying? I can't hear. I try to move, but my body stays still. Matter of fact, how'd I even get here? Wait, I'm scared. They close the casket, now I'm getting carried. My pallbearers are shedding tears as we head to the cemetery. I can't believe this is happening already. I'm barely getting started, haven't even gotten married. Now my name is in an obituary with commentary about what I did during the time that I was here. I feel my body drop. I think I'm getting buried. Oh my gosh, what about my parents and my bro? So sad they had to see me go. Blow out their nose and then throw in the rose, wishing that I rose up from this hole to come home. But no. Dearly departed, I know that you hear me calling God, but once you answer, I'm asking, how'd you let this happen? I'm trapped in this casket. There's no coming back, and it's tragic. I'm held captive, but you're the captain, right? Will you let me postpone the afterlife at least to say goodbye? Can I buy some time? I promise I'll be a good guy. Lord, why? But then I open my eyes, and to my surprise, I'm here in my sheets. It was just a dream. But that made me think. I wonder what they're gonna say when I'm dead and gone. Will I ever get it right? Will I live my whole life wrong? I'm asking what they're gonna say when I'm laying in a casket on that day if my body's made of ashes. What they're gonna say? Wonder what they're gonna say. So now I'm sitting on my bed with all these thoughts in my head. Man, I really thought I was dead. But then I woke up, guess I get to do it again. Repented for my sins, thank God I got a second chance. But it made me take a glance at my life. I had an existential crisis. Like, who am I if not defined by these things on my driver's license, my height, my name, my race, my age, my face, and why do I exist? Is my purpose just to get rich, drive a nice whip, and live in a big crib with a wife, kids, and a picket fence? I'm convinced there's more to it than this. I want to make a difference. I want to sow seeds so others could reap the benefits. Life is short and is limited, so in the finite minutes that I've been given, I strive to reach my limits. Why are so many satisfied with just getting by? I want to thrive, fly, my limits in the sky. The day you die, you don't get to decide. I got no time for strife. Put beef to the side because I realize that life It's all about purpose. And it's also full of pain. So find what makes it worth it. I got everything to gain, so I keep working. You gotta have faith, because it ain't certain. I wonder what they gonna say when I'm dead and gone. Will I ever get it right? Will I live my whole life wrong? I'm asking what they gonna say when I'm laying in a casket. On that day, if my body's made of ashes, what they gonna say? I wonder what they gonna say. Final slumber.
That is wonderful. And honestly, Tim, for me too, it really aligns, like you said, like it crosses different gender backgrounds, because I mean, all of us have that moment, right? None of us have a date stamped on our butt, but we all have an expiration date coming at some point. And what are we going to do in the time that we have? And so thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the studio today with me and spending time and just bringing your authentic self so freely.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for creating a space where I could bring my full self.
I have loved it.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is fun.